Dino De Laurentiis and John Guillermin had been interested in making a sequel to their 1976 film King Kong. In 1977, he said there would definitely be a sequel. Steve McQueen made a picture in which he died at the end, but they made another picture with Steve McQueen. Many stars die at the end of the picture and then go on to the next picture, De Laurentiis said. Kong is a star. We are going to have a new story and a new Kong. The progress of a sequel was complicated by the fact that 1976 film was considered a financial disappointment and there were ongoing legal uncertainties over who owned the rights to King Kong. A number of scripts had been written. They had included King Kong in Russia, King Kong in Africa, and even King Kong in outer space, said writer Steve Pressfield. It was not an exaggeration. They even had one with little kids leading him around saying things like, "Careful, Kong, don't step on that car," and they even thought of loose remakes to the 1933 Son of Kong. But what would end up happening was possibly even crazier than that, with Kong finding a mate in John Guillermin's 1986 film, King Kong Lives.
You there! Are those weapons loaded?
You bet, General. So are we. We'll be shooting each other, you damn fool. You want to get killed? I want that ass head on the hood of my pickup.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. Connor here along with you with Chris to continue the King Kong franchise. And today we are looking at a sequel to the 1976 remake of King Kong with the film King Kong Lives, which was released in 1986. So, Chris, I know, I believe this was your first, was this a first time watch for you, or did you watch this as a kid?
Second time. I saw it somewhere in the middle school era, but yeah, second time ever seeing it all the way through.
And what'd you think of this one on the rewatch?
Not terribly positive of it. You know, it has its, you know, the inherent moments of entertainment that you can get from a monster movie, but this is pretty low tier for me as far as these King Kong movies go.
Yeah, I know we had talked before and said that this wasn't anyone's favorite, and when I was looking up the soundtrack for this, I couldn't really find anything, so I tried to look it up on YouTube and found most of it. I think there were some tracks missing, but I was just reading through some of the comments for, you know, just wasting some time. Here it is, and somebody said, I won't read their name, I mean, it's just like it looks like it's almost like a gamer tag. And it said, "This is hands down the best King Kong movie. I was 5 when it came out, and it's crazy how it's still the best Kong movie from 1986.
Oh gosh. Well, hey, more power to him, man. You know, I mean, there's a movie out there for everybody, so I'm glad they love it. You know, no hate against anyone who enjoys it.
No, somebody's giving it some love. I don't know how much love it'll get from us today, but I remember watching this as a kid, and I had fun with it as a kid. And on the rewatch, I watched it twice. I watched it a while, maybe I watched it once, maybe like a month or so ago, to get like a kind of like my favorite character and whatnot, like we do for the each podcast. And then I watched it again to kind of just like concentrate on the film itself without having to be like, all right, what was my favorite line of dialogue, and like kind of just to sit back and watch it. And there were parts of it that were fun and I could enjoy, but I will say everything with Lady Kong I absolutely did not approve.
Yeah. I mean, I might be able to extend that further. Just I didn't approve of anything in the movie. That's taking it a little far. But back to that YouTube comment, it's very funny because I remember there was one of the I think it might have been the second or third Godzilla anime entry of the anime trilogy, where there was a trailer that dropped to like announce when it was coming to Netflix, and one of the YouTube comments was like, thank God they finally made good Godzilla movies with this anime trilogy. And I was like, that was the most mind blowing comment I ever read. I was like, what are you talking about? But each to their own. There's a movie out there for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I always welcome, I've seen her first when I was younger in the Terminator film, so I always welcome seeing Linda Hamilton when I was younger and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I liked that she was in this. I always like
Agreed.
seeing King Kong. So it's still, I can have fun with it being a King Kong fan, but anybody who's not a King Kong fan is gonna think this is like one of the worst films put to the big screen.
Yeah, this one's a little bit like of a sense of homework that you have to do it. You don't so much want to do it. I too liked seeing, for me, the only movies I've really off the top of my head that I regularly saw Linda Hamilton in was Terminator and Terminator 2. So it was nice to see something a little bit in between there where she still looks more or less as she did in Terminator 1 before she got all sort of like fit and ripped and lean for Terminator 2.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a lot of like points of this film that we're gonna talk about that we probably liked or characters or whatnot. When we get to that point, I'm sure we'll have some things to talk about, but I'll give you some background on the film so we can go ahead and get there. King Kong Lives, known internationally as King Kong 2, is a 1986 American giant monster film directed by John Gillerman and written by Ronald Shusett and Stephen Pressfield, with special effects by Carlo Ramboldi. Produced by the De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, it is a sequel to the 1976 remake of King Kong, and it stars Brian Kerwin, Linda Hamilton, John Ashton, Peter Michael Getz, Frank Meriden, and Jimmy Ray Weeks. The film was released to American theaters by the De Laurentiis Entertainment Group on December 19, 1986, and King Kong Lives proved to be a critical and financial failure and was the last live-action King Kong film for nearly 2 decades, and Universal Pictures would return the character to the big screen with Peter Jackson's King Kong remake in 2005. So there's a little back, even got some short, history and like a little bit of background on the film, so that might not tell us too much about it.
Yeah. Well, another fun coincidence was it was the other film that came out in 1986 that had Lives in the title, the other one being Jason Lives, Friday the 13th Part 6. And I don't think it's spoiling anything to say that I prefer Jason Lives very, very much over King Kong Lives.
100% agree with you there. I mean, it's this one follows what I think is one of my favorite, of the King Kong franchise with the 76 remake. And then is worse, and Jason Lives follows a film that is not very high on my Friday the 13th ranking and is one of the best in the franchise. So two opposites.
Yeah, and apparently before they went with the title Godzilla 1985, they were considering Godzilla Lives for the title of the American version of Return of Godzilla.
Look at Chris. My man spitting out the fun facts here.
Yeah, when I got him.
Hey, I will take all of them, as always. Why don't I go ahead and I'll pop in a trailer for us. We'll get a plot synopsis for King Kong Lives, and we'll come back with some numbers, fun facts, and all that good stuff, as always.
How's our boy doing?
Incredible.
Now, easy, big guy. Hold on.
They're approximately 50 feet tall, wearing their birthday suits.
God, look at the size of him.
Did you say your beast is a female?
He was trying to get to the female.
They've done to her.
She's pregnant.
You had to America's biggest hero is back. And he is not happy. King Kong lives.
After being shot down from the World Trade Center at the end of the previous movie, Kong is revealed to have been revived from his death and has been kept in a coma for the next 10 years at the Atlantic Institute under the care of surgeon Dr. Amy Franklin. A heart transplant is required to save Kong's life, giving Kong a computer-monitored artificial heart. However, he has lost so much blood in his coma that he needs a blood transfusion to keep him alive. However, Dr. Franklin believes that no species of ape or another animal whose blood type matches Kong's. Meanwhile, adventurer Hank Mitch Mitchell travels to Borneo, theorizing that Kong's home island was once part of the same landmass. While exploring the jungle, Mitch soon encounters a giant female ape of Kong's species, who is quickly subdued and captured. Mitch offers to send the ape, who he dubs Lady Kong, to the Institute so that her blood can be used for Kong's operation. Dr. Franklin is apprehensive about the risks. The Institute accepts the offer despite her objections. Through a risky procedure, Kong's blood transfusion and the heart transplant are a narrow success. While the Institute celebrates, Kong soon revives and senses the presence of Lady Kong. Realizing her presence is rousing Kong, the Institute attempts to remove Lady Kong, causing her to panic. Kong breaks free from his containment and rescues Lady Kong from hers. The two apes escape the Institute together and into the wilderness. To hunt down the apes, a military force is called in, led by the overzealous Lieutenant Colonel Archie Nevitt. To help protect Kong, Dr. Franklin and Mitchell team up to pursue the two apes, while dodging Nevitt's forces. During their time in the wilderness, Kong and Lady Kong bond and become mates. While following the apes, Mitchell and Dr. Franklin similarly bond, and the two hook up. Nevitt's forces soon find the apes and launch an attack. Despite Kong's attempts to fight them off, Lady Kong is subdued and captured. Kong himself falls into a ravine and is presumed dead when his heart monitor loses its signal. Months later, Lady Kong is kept in captivity by Nevitt, while Mitchell attempts to buy out land in Borneo for a reserve. When Dr. Franklin is allowed to check in on her, she notices Lady Kong's behavior. She suspects that Kong could still be alive and that Lady Kong may sense him. Dr. Franklin is dismissed by her peers, believing that the environment isn't suitable for Kong to survive for long. However, it turns out Kong has survived in hiding out in the wilderness, and can similarly sense Lady Kong in her captivity. As Kong seeks out his mate, his survival is exposed when he wanders through a neighborhood. With this, both Nevitt's forces and local hunters set out to hunt Kong down, with Nevitt disregarding orders to capture Kong alive. Dr. Franklin and Mitchell set out to find Kong and happen upon him as he's trapped and tormented by a group of hunters. When Dr. Franklin realizes that Kong's artificial heart is failing, Kong quickly breaks loose, inadvertently destroying Dr. Franklin's computer used to control his heart, leaving him with little time to live. Following Kong's advance, Dr. Franklin and Mitchell break into Nevitt's compound to help free Lady Kong from captivity. It is then discovered Lady Kong is pregnant with Kong's offspring. Kong and Lady Kong soon reach a farmhouse where Lady Kong goes into labor. They are followed by Dr. Franklin and Mitchell, as well as Nevitt's forces. Nevitt begins an assault on Kong, who, despite being grievously wounded, manages to drive off the military and kill Nevitt himself. As Dr. Franklin and Mitchell watch on, Lady Kong successfully gives birth to an infant ape. Mortally wounded, Kong manages to see and touch his son just before he bleeds out. Rescued, Lady Kong and her infant son are brought back to the reserve in Borneo to live out their days in peace.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah, I think I did the movie more justice than it deserves.
Than the film did itself.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we go ahead and jump it right over into some numbers here and keep on rolling with this one.
Let's go.
So King Kong Lives had a budget of $18 million and a box office return of just under an estimated $49 million. So Chris has our inflation numbers for those.
Yes, so that would have been a box office return of about $140.7 million on a budget of about $51.8 million. So not bad, but that's kind of just in that realm of decent, enough to not have, lost their butts on this one and no one to be fired over it, but certainly not any amount that you would ever, pursue another film off of. Certainly makes sense why there was not another King Kong movie for about 20 years after this one.
Well, I think this one did pretty well still with the VHS sales. I know it wasn't real big on DVD, and it's terribly hard to find on Blu-ray. I found a copy when it was like a limited release of like 5,000 copies or something like that. It's like a Blu-ray site that I follow. They emailed me that there was a certain supply. It was like $40 for it, and I was like, you know what? I got all the other ones. Why not? So I snatched it up. But I know I think on VHS sales it did well.
Come 2026, they'll drop that 40th anniversary 4K remaster. Someone will.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
But that's always the nice way to see how they inflate the value of movies. That like if this movie could be found in any Walmart, there would be almost no value to any unit of it being sold. But by limiting it, it's like, oh yeah, we can sell it for $40 a pop now because there's so few of them.
Yeah, just like the Criterion Collection just released, a couple weeks ago, I think it was. They said that they're gonna in March they're releasing the Godzilla vs. Biollante or Biollante, the 4K. So I hopped on Amazon and pre-ordered that real quick. I'm sure that'll be a quick seller for a lot of people or a lot of Godzilla fans.
Yeah, I bought that one as well. Criterion's pretty good about you not really having to worry about their stuff like selling out or going out of print. At least not for the first few years that it's released. But I think Godzilla fans in particular with Godzilla versus Biollante are probably quick to jump on that one because it has been out of print on DVD and Blu-ray for a number of years. So we're probably all very ecstatic to get an official copy of that.
Yeah, keep them coming, Criterion. You're starting to spoil us.
Yeah. If we can get a Godzilla movie a month, I'll be happy.
Yep. Cross your fingers.
There's 40 of them, so it's not like they're not in short supply.
Yeah, absolutely. King Kong Lives is rated a 3.9 out of 10 on IMDb. Has a
I'm not interrupting you. This isn't a gaffe. At first, when you said 3.9, I was thinking to myself, 3.9 out of 5. Damn, that's pretty high. And then you said out of 10.
They get worse. The numbers get worse. It is rated at 8%, or it has an 8% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 32% rating on Metacritic, and then our Google users, they were very generous at 71% of Google users liked this film.
I would have guessed like 68 or 69%.
So you were close.
They're very kind, very kind.
It does have some good numbers in our Kong numbers. King Kong is on screen for just under 25 and a half minutes, or about 24% of the film, with his first appearance being bright and early when they redo the Trade Center skit right at the beginning.
Yeah, the thing that was very common for sequels in this era was to always kind of open up with the climactic or pivotal moments from the previous entry. You see it at the beginning of a number of Friday the 13th movies or Psycho 2, and King Kong Lives does the same thing, to kind of bring you back into the moment to let you know where you left off.
Yeah, no, I loved when films did that. I wish more films would do that today. But like you said, that a lot of films did that back in the day for the sequels. We don't really get a lot of direct sequels nowadays. So I mean, it's a lot of reboot or reimagining or
the last time I remember like a major movie literally like doing the whole thing where they're opening within a scene from the first movie was maybe Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. They restart you in the middle of where the first movie was to kind of show you a pivotal event from a different perspective. And I can't think of like too many mainstream sequels that have anything else from that. Like Iron Man 2 kind of opens with someone watching the end of the first movie on TV. So it kind of has it, but outside of that, like it's not really done.
Nope. They retcon, or they do a direct sequel to the original, like the new trilogy of Halloweens did, or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's never a straight to the point direct sequel nowadays. So we miss out on a lot of that.
Yeah, Batman versus Superman and the Snyder Cut of Justice League kind of did it, where they both open within events from the previous entry, which was really cool and refreshing. But outside of that, yeah, it's pretty much a lost practice.
You know, I call myself like a film nerd, and I have not seen those two films.
Really? So
I have
you've
not.
seen Man of Steel?
I have not.
You've not even seen Man of Steel.
I have not.
Oh.
I didn't get into. I wasn't a big superhero movie fan.
Okay.
So my
Well,
daughter's mom and I got together
right.
and we started watching like the Marvel, like
Alrighty,
all
fair
those
enough.
films.
So Man of Steel, the ultimate edition of Batman v Superman, and the Zack Snyder's Justice League, the 4-hour version of it. Those are the three you need to watch. Don't watch the 2017 2-hour version of Justice League. Make sure that it's Man of Steel, Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. You are in for a treat.
Okay, you know, when you recommend these things, I either type them in my phone or I write them down. So I do have these on a list.
Yeah, get around to those for sure. They are excellent.
It's winter up here, so I got plenty of time to sit inside and put the fireplace on and watch some movies.
Good.
That is all I have for numbers on this film for you. I'll get to some fun facts, and some of these will, I think, are going to give you a decent little laugh. I got 7 of them here for you, and my first one is Linda Hamilton accepted her role in this film because she saw how the previous film had skyrocketed the career of Jessica Lange, and during filming, she had no idea what the end product would look like because she was acting against blue screens or giant ape hands, and she was absolutely horrified when she saw the final product, which was universally blasted by reviewers and audiences alike.
Yeah, I can sympathize. I mean, and back then, she probably only knew, in 1985-ish when this movie's coming together, she probably only knows like, because Jessica Lange took a 3-year hiatus from acting after King Kong, and then came back as much more polished and kind of talented and refined. So she probably thinks like, oh, well, Jessica Lange's kind of big and popular and famous now, and she started with King Kong, so that's a great thing for me to do. And like, oh, it's got the same director as that movie, so clearly it's going to be, up to par and just as good. I can see the logic, but it's like everyone kind of really hates on Jessica Lange's performance in that King Kong movie, and hence why she kind of took time off from acting after that movie to kind of develop herself a little bit more. So it's kind of like this thing where it's like, yeah, you kind of got it right, but you kind of didn't get it right,
Yeah, I don't know. Besides Terminator, Terminator 2, this film, and then Terminator Dark Fate, which came out a couple of years ago, I don't know what else I've seen Linda Hamilton in, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look at some of her stuff, and it's like, yeah, she was on the Beauty and the Beast TV show in the 80s, but I mean, that was before I was born. But,
Yeah.
That was kind of like 87 to 89, so kind of in that bridge between that and Terminator 2. Yeah, she doesn't not as prolific as you would think maybe she would or could be. Yeah, but it would have been like if they hadn't made a sequel to A Nightmare on Elm Street, and so 10 years later they're making some cheapo depot sequel, and you're like, well, that movie launched Johnny Depp's career, so I should do it. It's like, okay, kind of, but not really.
Well, I'm sure for my next one, I'm sure this actor was glad he didn't take the role in this film. Peter Weller was offered a part in the film, but opted to play the title role in RoboCop instead.
Oh my gosh, RoboCop is one of my all-time favorite movies. Me and Peter Weller happen to have the same birthday, June 24th. And coincidentally enough, the female lead of RoboCop is also born on June 24th. So ever since I was a kid, I've always loved that movie. When I found out that piece of trivia, I loved it even more. So thank God that Peter Weller was in RoboCop instead of King Kong Lives, because like I think that's an iconic all-time classic movie, and King Kong Lives is not.
Yeah, I got a soft spot for RoboCop as well, so
yeah,
I agree with you on that one. This film is listed among the 100 most enjoyably bad movies ever made and goes in the Golden Raspberry Award founder John Wilson's book, The Official Razzie Movie Guide.
Yeah, I mean, enjoyably bad is maybe one way of putting it. it certainly is fun to make fun of if you have some buddies on the couch with you.
Yeah, I can have fun and still have a laugh with this film, and it's definitely.
I mean, I was watching it alone, and I certainly laughed during parts.
I just can't get over Lady Kong. That kills me for this. I think if it was just a solo Kong film, and say he grew
or
an
if they had
to like Linda Hamilton's character, and
or if they had played them, a bit more animalistic, because with some of the scenes between the two, it just feels like you're watching a silent version of like a bad Planet of the Apes movie or something. They when he first frees her, they have this like love at first sight kind of a moment between them, and then they're in the woods, and she's like helping him with his cut leg, and he's like copping a feel on her, and it's like, what is going on here? I don't know.
Yeah, he takes the little snake and scares her with it, and I don't know. I just think if he would have grown an attachment to Linda Hamilton's character for like taking care of him like through his coma and whatnot, and then the army somehow takes her because she's trying to save Kong and locks her up, and then he comes for her, and that's why he's like going at it with the army again, because he thinks they were trying to hurt her or take her away from him. And I don't know, just delete Lady Kong altogether and give us another little like woman and beast like love story.
Yeah, I mean, I get that they were wanting that ending of Lady Kong and Kong's son kind of. So I get that, but it's like you could have just played it in a way where it was just a lot less kind of cringy and goofy and less weird,
Yeah, the director and the studio, you could clearly tell they wanted a Son of Kong like to be a second film, just like the original two did, but they did this one, and they went a completely different route with this one.
Yeah. We'll never, we didn't get that. We never got that third film of the trilogy all about, Kong's son all grown up and they kill his mom, and then he takes revenge, that epic third chapter they were building up to. We never got it.
I'm glad we didn't. No.
Yeah. If this is any indicator of what the quality would have been, then I'm very glad we didn't.
Yes. In the scene where people are celebrating the success of King Kong's heart operation, there's a person carrying a sign that reads, "You Kong, me Fei," a reference to Fei Ray, the actress from the original King Kong from 1933.
That's pretty fun. That's a nice little bit.
Jeff Bridges and Jessica Lange were asked to reprise their roles as Jack Prescott and Dwan, but both declined after reading the script.
Yeah, wise move. You maybe, if this had come out, if this had been made straight after King Kong, you maybe could have hooked one or both of them into it right off the heels of the financial success of that movie. But 10 years later, I think they were both on to bigger and better and more serious endeavors.
Absolutely. I'm not 100% sure what they were doing after this or after the 76 Kong, but if they say Jessica Lange's career skyrocketed, I'm sure she had much bigger and better things to do than a Kong sequel.
Agreed.
The De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, which distributed the movie in the U.S., reportedly told all of the TV critics who requested footage from the film for the reviews that they would only provide the footage if the critics provided written guarantees that the reviews would be favorable. And most of the critics ended up not only stating this, but blasting the film as terrible and not having any scenes worth showing audiences in any case.
Golly.
So the studio did him a favor and they still knocked him.
Yeah, that's rough. Well, I mean, it's tough to, it's like, what kind of blackmail situation is that where it's like, oh, watch our movie, but make sure you say something nice about it. I mean, the sad truth is that probably happens a lot more often these days than we're aware of.
I'm sure, you want
to make sure that your website keeps getting invited back to the next premiere, the next premiere, and the next premiere. You better give us good press. Simple as that.
Yep, absolutely. I could see that happening for sure.
Cough, Disney, cough.
Star Wars series. No.
Yeah. Don't get me started.
I had to say that just for you. My last fun fact here for you connects us to Godzilla, as we seem to do a lot in the Kong episodes. One Japanese poster for this film was illustrated by the late Noriyoshi Orai, who was known for illustrating posters for most of the Heisei and Millennium Godzilla films.
Ooh, that's a nice touch. I'd love to see that poster somewhere. I have to Google that, but that's very cool. And also continues the trend of a Godzilla movie coming out, in this case Godzilla 1985 in America, and then a King Kong movie coming out the year later, just like with Terror of Mechagodzilla and Godzilla Final Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. They, I love connecting these two because they're my two favorite big monsters. Or, you know,
and when Shin Godzilla came out, King Kong Skull Island came out the next year. You know,
I didn't connect to that one. Good call.
Yeah.
That is all I have for you on the fun facts. I'll go ahead and ask you, if you had a favorite character of this film, who was it?
I mean, again, I by default, I suppose it's the character of Amy Franklin, Linda Hamilton's character. You know, I like her as an actress, you know, in the movies I've seen her in, and she's, you know, she's not much of the Fay Ray archetype in this movie, but she's the closest we get, and she's at least a sort of well-intentioned protagonist. So I guess she's my favorite.
I did like her in this film. I haven't had a problem with any Linda Hamilton, like her acting in any of the films I've seen her in. She's not terrible. I mean, I didn't think she was like super gorgeous or anything, but when I was younger, I thought she was pretty in this film and like the first Terminator.
In the Terminator, she's got that kind of, she's got like, again, not like a bombshell look, but she's got a really attractive look in these two movies, you know?
Absolutely. She's not the one I chose. I ended up going with her counterpart. I went with Mitch. He's just
I almost went with him.
Yeah, he's just a nerdy guy. As soon as he finds Lady Kong, he's like thinking he's gonna be rich and all this, and like everybody's calling like Lady Kong his girlfriend and whatnot. And I think he's a fun character. He was the best character in the film for me. He ends up, you know, Linda Hamilton's character, she clearly doesn't like him at first. She's irritated with him, and you could tell that she kind of thinks he's annoying. But in the end, he ends up getting the girl. So he ended up being my favorite. I did want to give a dishonorable mention for a character for Colonel Nevitt, because he's such a douchebag in this film.
Yeah, he's almost your favorite in that way of like, yeah, he's a piece of crap that it's fun to hate on and just count down the minutes till he gets killed. Like he's good in that way, but yeah, he's a doucher.
Yeah, I always go back to the line where I can't remember the exact quote, but they're riding in the Jeeps and his superior is telling him that he wants like a live capture, and he's like, Colonel, you know, he's so and so's trying to get a hold of you, and he's like, well, what channel is he on? And he tells him what channel, and he's like, yeah, well, tell him that channel's not working. So I always thought he was very easy to hate, and you know, you always, those kind of characters you always root for, like, all right, you know their demise, like they're gonna have a bad ending, so what is gonna come of it? And it ends up being, you know, just Kong smashing him into the ground with his fist, kind of like, you know, I always look at that like Kong Skull Island, like Samuel Jackson.
Yes, Sam Jackson's death in Kong Skull Island is very much feels like a reference to King Kong Lives. It feels lifted straight out of it.
Absolutely, that's what I was getting at. Oh shoot, my favorite score for the film, and this was hard because I couldn't really find an OST or like a soundtrack for the film. I found quite a few of them, but I ended up going with one called Kong's Final Battle.
That is the one that I also went with.
Okay, I thought I found a clip of it where it showed the scene, but there was no sound effects to the scene. It was just the music on YouTube.
Yeah. And the King Kong 76 had a number of those on YouTube as well. I think it's someone's pet hobby to put the mute clips of the movie with just the soundtrack playing, so you can see where in the movie it was playing.
I thought it encompassed, like, I thought it went with that scene very well. How it's like it's really like loud and up front at the beginning, and towards the end when, you know, like you can see that Kong's kind of fading off. Like, you know, clearly he's gonna die. He does in every Kong movie, and you know this one's called.
And it's got some of that the end of Aliens. I think it's like Bishop's Countdown or something like that is what it's called. It's got a lot of that kind of climactic 80s intensity kind of a music to it, and so I dug it as well.
Absolutely. I definitely liked that track. There wasn't a whole lot, like I said, it was hard to find this soundtrack unless you wanted to like pay for it or purchase it off of somewhere. And for as often as I would listen to it, I wasn't gonna do that. No offense
Yeah,
to
this
the score.
this isn't that level of a soundtrack. I agree.
No. Well, what was your favorite quote or most memorable line from the film?
I had to go with one that was a little bit humorous in it, and it's when the hunters are kind of coming along to help take Kong out, and there's there's a line where the guy goes, he sees him, he goes, "What the hell is this, Deliverance?" And he goes, "You there, are those?" And someone else says, "You there, are those weapons loaded?" And they go, "You bet, General, and so are we." You know, it's like total, like this kind of takes place in that kind of middle America kind of environment. It's not like an island and then a big city, and so of course they put in like drunk rednecks with firearms in there, which is just always a whole lot of fun to have in a movie like this.
I had one from them. That line always gives me a laugh. That's when they cruise off and take off on the boat from the pier, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I had one from the hunters as well. I didn't get the exact name of which hunter it was, but it's where they're kind of torching Kong's cheek with the fire and the wood, and the guy goes, "That's enough, Will. Leave the damn animal alone." And they kind of get into like a pissing match with each other. And he goes, "If you're gonna kill him, but don't torment the poor son of a bitch," you know. And it's like, exactly, like finally somebody stands up for, you know, they're doing this for no reason. Like Kong didn't do anything to them, but they get their comeuppance here soon. But I just like that guy was like, "Hey, like, knock it off. Like, this is ridiculous."
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. Like a little bit of color to the characters. They're not all just a bunch of evil hilljacks or something like that, you know.
Yeah. The only other one I wanted to mention was a quote from Colonel Nevitt, because like I said, I just love to hate that guy in this movie, and it's when Kong jumps into the water and he ends up hitting his head on that rock, and he just kind of says it really cocky and arrogantly. He just goes, "Not even your Kong could survive that." And it's just like every time that part in the movie comes up, it's like, God, I just hate this guy, and he's a movie character.
Yeah, you're a doucher, you know. And of course, I mean, what line is more seductive than "Why not? We're primates too." Isn't that just what you want to hear, you know, before you're getting down to business? I mean, good gravy. That was some corny stuff right there.
There's some bad stuff in here, but there's some stuff that'll give you some laughs. So I mean,
it's bad in that kind of a way. Yeah,
so bad that it's good.
Yeah, laughably bad. You know.
Well, since this film for us is laughably bad, what was your favorite scene in the film?
So, in terms of, I have an honorable mention and then a dishonorable mention. So, in terms of a legitimate scene, it's actually the heart transplant. I thought, like, it's hokey in one sense in that they're just using all of these oversized tools. There's not like specialized, unique equipment. It's just like a big blood bag and like a big scalpel and things like that, you know. But I love the moment where they're lowering the artificial heart down, and one of the devices holding it snaps. And so, like, in this moment where you think they would just lower it down and go about their business standard issue, you have this like scene of tension where it's like this thing snaps and it's dangling. They're all keeping it from falling. It's like, yeah, if that thing just like fell and plopped on the ground and smashed into two pieces, like they'd be screwed. And it's like you wouldn't think to kind of add in a moment of tension in a scene like that in a movie like this, but it just kind of shows it's like, hey, it's like they were there were some attempts here to not just make it some bland by the numbers thing. Like they were trying to do some interesting things, and so like that was a nice little tense moment of like, hey, yeah, pay attention. It's like it's not all just gonna happen simply. So that's an honorable mention. And then the dishonorable mention that I gotta have is when they're doing this whole, they do this whole like King Kong and Lady Kong kind of seduce each other, and they parallel it with Amy and Hank, and it's like Lady Kong helps Kong with his leg wound, and then she helps him with his arm wound, and like to me, like I don't like to call movies corny very much. Like I think it's a cheap way to describe a movie, but holy heck, that's a pretty like doing like the exact parallel was pretty corny to me. I'm like, man, this is tough. Like I get what you're going for, but you're really going over the top with it here.
Yeah, I do like the to touch on what you said about the opening, like the heart transplant. I do like that scene, and it is like they try to keep you on your toes with that, like with the snapping of like the wires or whatever it was that was holding the heart up, like like a little not quite a jump scare, but just like almost like a little wake up call to the audience, like, hey, anything can happen here. So I did like that.
Yeah, when I was a young kid and the first time I ever discovered this movie, it was just channel flipping, and we came across it on one of the channels, and it was pretty much like right at that scene almost. And so like that scene, like those images of like the framing of it being lowered and then it snapping and then grabbing it, like that's like what I associated with this movie for a number of years until I hit middle school and actually got to watch the whole thing.
The one that I went with was of course cliche for me probably, or for a lot of people, is Kong versus the Army at the end, where he kind of
okay, yeah, that's good.
He comes out, he's pretty much like throwing all the rocks at the Army, and this is another one where it's just brutal. It's bloody. They're shooting
very bloody.
Just they're giving them everything they got. And Kong is still coming out. Like, he's got this heart, and you can tell, like, he's getting weaker and weaker, but he's still giving it all he has against him. And then you see it's just him and Colonel Nevitt, and you love to see that. Like, Colonel Nevitt tries to run, and you hear him go, "Da!" before Kong's hand just hits the ground, and you're like, oh, well, he's gone. And then he lifts up his fist, and you just see his legs sticking out of the ground. And then, of course, sadly, Kong, he falls over, or he starts to fall over, and he just gets his inevitable fate for another King Kong film.
Mm-hmm. And I liked when Kong there's a fight scene, or well, not really a fight scene, earlier in the film with the rednecks, and like he like straight up like bites one of them in half and is like munching on them and like picks the skull out of his teeth and stuff. It's like it was interesting to give Kong like human antagonist that he could just straight up murder. That was ripping them in half and stuff. Like that was a fun sequence to see.
Yeah, he was picking up snakes. He was killing alligators from the swamps. He was killing humans in this one. He was having a heyday with he was taking it to the Army, saving Lady Kong. I mean, there's a lot, like the Kong action in this film I do like. It's just there's a lot of things in this film that drag it down. Again, I think if this was just a Kong film without Lady Kong, I think it'd be a much better film. I mean, anybody out there that disagrees with me, feel free to leave a comment or, tell me what you think. But I think with just King Kong in this and not a Lady Kong, this would be a way better film. It might be like 10 minutes shorter, and I think it would just be a lot better.
You mean you didn't want it to just be Queen Kong with no Kong at all?
No, not whatsoever. I have seen the posters for that, and I never want to see that movie.
Speaking of posters, I looked up the Ori poster for King Kong Lives.
It is badass.
It's better than the movie. It's better than the movie. It's like, damn, like they went hard with that poster. It's better than the movie it's representing.
You beat me to it because I was going to look it up and send it to you because it is definitely one that I like.
Yeah, it's legit. Can we just have Japanese artists do graphic posters for every blockbuster movie that comes out? Like, my God.
Well, that's all we got for our favorites category, Chris. I wanted to shoot something at you, see if we could get some conversation going on this. So I know clearly this isn't one of your favorite King Kong movies, but what did you compared to the 33 version of Son of Kong, like in comparison, you know,
Oh, oh, that's interesting. I will say this for starters: that the drop off from 33 Kong to Son of Kong, and the drop off from 76 Kong to King Kong Lives, it's comparable in my opinion in terms of how like much lesser it is. I suppose if if I had to pick which one that I think is kind of a little better, I think I think purely in terms of the concept, it would have to be, I think, Son of Kong, because it feels more like a true sequel. It's Carl Denham returning, so there's a continuity of a main character, and they go back to Skull Island, so there's kind of a stronger sense of kind of connection and identity there. And it feels like in its own weird way, it's trying to be a sort of a more legitimate sequel and a bit of another kind of tragic conclusion, but also a little bit of redemption for Carl. And so like again, like on like thesis, it's that one, you know. I mean, the King Kong Lives has, you know, some more violence and a bit more, you know, on screen guerrilla action, and it's got Kong himself, but I mean, it's just kind of a yeah, I mean, it's it's just a little bit of a slog of a movie, a little bit. It's just got so many wonky things about it that like at least Son of Kong is kind of like this lean and mean, you know, 69-minute kind of in and out, simple, small kind of story that's of its era, and it doesn't feel like the sort of they're both kind of cash grab sequels. But Son of Kong actually feels like it has kind of a little bit maybe the superior premise. The whole going into a coma for 10 years and then we bring him back with an artificial heart, but then there's a mate and then he's get like that whole it's all a little wonky in King Kong Lives.
Okay, and I would agree with you on that. I just wanted to see what you would think. Like you said, the Son of Kong, it's a quick 69, 70-minute film, and
Yeah.
like
How would you rate this compared to something like King Kong Escapes, which for me is like another like lower tier King Kong movie?
I think I would honestly, from my most recent rewatches that we've done for the podcast episodes, I think I would take King Kong Escapes over this. I think I had more fun with that film.
I think so too, and it's got that. And not to sound biased, but it's kind of got that like 1960s monster movie vintage charm to it, you know.
Yep, we get to see some familiar characters from the
Yeah,
Godzilla franchise, so that's always nice to have.
And taking itself kind of like threading that needle of not taking itself too seriously, but kind of not being too goofy. You know, it kind of lands in a spot where it's like it's a different kind of movie. This movie feels like it's maybe taking itself more seriously than it should, or I don't know, or maybe they weren't sure how not seriously to take it, or they were trying not to be goofy, but like it's one of the most goofiest concepts you could kind of have. Like I don't know, it's kind of you know in the aims of trying to be like, oh well, how could Kong live? He's in a coma for 10 years. How could we resuscitate him with an artificial heart? Like in the desire of seeming like they were trying to make it like grounded and realistic, they just make it sound like infinitely more wonky, you know.
Yeah, this film, you kind of went the route I was going to ask you. I was going to go out on a limb and say, we've done a couple films on the podcast where we weren't really the biggest fan of, like the Godzilla anime trilogy or All Monsters Attack from the Godzilla franchise, and then like Jaws the Revenge. Now King Kong Lives. Like, I was going to ask how you compare this film to those other three that you weren't really a fan of.
Okay, I would say Jaws the Revenge is worst. Is that's for me? That's the worst. Then, oh man, then I would say King Kong Lives, because like Jaws the Revenge and King Kong Lives, like in my opinion, and I'm not trying to be mean, but they're like outright bad movies. Like if they're like, Chris, is that a good movie or a bad movie? I'm like, they're bad movies. Like they might have their moments and they might have their curiosities, but they're just bad movies. All Monsters Attack is a very different and weird and unusual Godzilla movie, but there's a lot of reasons why it is that, and it's for what it is, being a sort of children's fantasy, it's fine at that. It's perfectly fine at being that. It's not like it's a bad version of what it is. What it is just isn't what you really want from a Godzilla movie. Kind of like Godzilla 98. That's not a bad monster movie. That's just a bad Godzilla movie. But King Kong Lives and Jaws the Revenge, bar any standards, are kind of just badly made movies. So that's how I would rate that. Then the anime trilogy, it kind of always runs the risk of being it's not bad as in badly made. It's just a really weird direction to go in for Godzilla. And when you do a whole trilogy of anime movies like that, it's like if it was one movie, it wouldn't be so bad, but it's a whole 4.5 hour cycle of 3 movies. But again, not badly made, just like really badly executed. As opposed to, like, if you're into that kind of like dark, hard sci-fi, philosophical, edgelord anime stuff, then you might like that Godzilla anime trilogy. But so you could defend it if that's what you're into, but they aren't like, this is a badly made movie that's just plain bad, like I would describe King Kong Lives and Jaws the Revenge.
Okay, I always like to get you going and see what you think. So
yeah, if
I had to do that. So this being, I believe this will be our 61st episode. So out of the 62 films that or 62 episodes we have had, this is your second least favorite film out of all of them.
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, I think it's comfortable to say that these are, not to be. When you put it like that, it sounds so much worse. But it's like, yeah, like Jaws the Revenge, King Kong Lives, not getting rewatched by me anytime soon.
I won't knock you for it. I won't give you a hard time.
I mean, out of all, you've been here right alongside me. What would you say are your worst ones that what would you put at the bottom of the barrel?
I honestly think 2 of the anime trilogies would the second and third one would probably go at the very bottom. Okay. Jaws the Revenge is I'm a shark fan, but I that's just not a.
I will sit through all 4.5 boring hours of that anime trilogy before I watch Jaws Revenge again. I'm sorry.
King Kong Lives is down. It would probably be in my bottom 5 for what we've done.
King Kong Lives felt like 4.5 hours.
Yeah, that's
King Kong Lives felt like 4.5 hours.
I can still have fun with it, where the kids are Kong's walking and they crush the guys. I think it's his dad's. I don't know if it's a Lamborghini. I can't.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, my dad's gonna kill me." Yeah.
Just for little stuff like that, I can have fun with it. But this is not a good movie. It had some money and it could have been better. But one of the things that kills it for me, like I said, is Lady Kong. And then they I don't know, they changed the sound design for King Kong in this, which I was not a fan of the sound design for him in this one. And then the look of him is different as well. But I guess after being in a coma for 10 years, you
have worse latex. You're made out of worse latex when you're in a coma for 10 years. You have worse animatronics and worse costume design.
It used to bug me when I was younger that he looked different, but I would just kind of write it off like, he's aged 10 years. He's been in a coma. He fell off the Trade Center. Like,
continuity's not very strong in giant monster movies as it is anyway.
No.
Yeah. Also, like, can we just kind of talk about, like, if he fell from the top of the World Trade Center and crashed on the ground, would he not, like, have burst? Like, wouldn't, like, depending on how he landed, wouldn't that have, like, bashed his skull open or something from the sheer impact? Like, wouldn't his body have been much more significantly damaged than just the bullet holes? It's not like he was landing on a trampoline or something. Like, that always kind of blew my mind a little bit. Like, shouldn't he just be like mush when he hits that hard from that fall?
Yeah, that I was a nerd. Right before the episode, I kind of did some numbers, and him fall. If they say he was roughly 50-60 feet in the 76 film and this one, and going off the trade centers were what, about 1,100 feet tall.
Okay,
I didn't look up the exact number, It's about 18 times the size of Kong himself, 18 to 20 times. So that'd be like a 6-foot human, falling from 120 feet. Like, you're probably dead. Like, there's a really good chance.
You're done at that. I mean, like, they're not like recovering a fully intact body at that point. I don't think that's
No.
like just perfectly fine. I'm pretty sure they're finding smeared apple pie everywhere.
Yeah, and we get it's a movie, but your bones are shattered and there's some dust rolling around.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that math, because that's exactly what I was going to bring up. I'm like, relatively, like, what would that be like, to fall that far,
Yeah, no, thank you. I would rather not fall off of a 10 or 12-story building. So,
I mean, if you fall off of like a 20-foot house and like you land like on your back, but your head hits, like the back of your head hits, like that's not a good thing, like, let alone 100 feet.
yeah, no kidding. Kong fell 20 times his height and was in a coma for 10 years and came back and met the love of his life. Like,
yeah, and he was still full of vigor too. He had a one-shot wonder, and he had a kid, and he was still moving around and getting it all just fine.
he is the luckiest primate ever.
Or the unluckiest to be
This is true.
to be murdered and kept in a coma, then brought back with an artificial heart just to get completely blown away again, and your son's born just in time for you to die. I mean, I don't know.
All right, he's the luckiest unlucky primate.
Sure, we'll go with that.
We will go with that one. So this film did not have a sequel. This film was financially a box office flop. And then King Kong would again lay dormant until another remake was set again in the 1930s, directed by Peter Jackson. And his film, King Kong, would release in December of 2005. And we will be looking at that one on our next episode. And that is leaps and bounds better than this one. I cannot wait to get to that one. That should be an amazing conversation, because I found a ton of fun facts and everything on that film. That is going to be a lengthy conversation, just like the film itself. I mean, the uncut film of that is 3 hours and I think 25 minutes. So that'll be a good one to talk about.
Yeah. 3-hour episode. Here we come.
We're not doing a commentary on the movie now.
Oh, it's going to be long enough to serve as a commentary.
I will take it. I will take it as I can get it. But for this one, for King Kong Lives, that is all I have for you, Chris, on that film. We are done with this one.
Good riddance.
As always, I'll throw in some final thoughts on the film. I have fun with everything that has King Kong in this film. I always like Linda Hamilton as an actress, and her counterpart Mitch. He's not bad in this film either. Colonel Nevitt he's a good antagonist to root against, to die. Let's see how King Kong kills him in this film. I can't wait for that part every time I watch the film. But this film is I'm never really going to recommend this to anybody. Somebody might come over and I might have this on in the background or something way down the road, but I'm never going to be like, yeah, let's just sit down and watch it. But I do like it for the fact that it's a King Kong film, and that's about the only reason.
Yeah, it's for completionists only. If you're wanting to round out that collection and say, hey, I own every one of them, in the same way that if they drop a Blu-ray release of the anime Godzilla trilogy, I'll own it and I'll watch it every time that I decide to do a marathon of all of the movies, and I probably won't watch them ever outside of that. But it's for that. If you're in that gotta catch them all mode and you just want to have it, you'll have it. But it is tough for me to see anyone having a strong desire to kind of revisit this movie on any kind of regular basis.
No, I mean, it was a fun. It was fun to talk about this one time and to go back and revisit it. But I probably will not watch this movie for a while now, having watched it about 2.5 times for the podcast.
We'll talk again in 2036 for the 50-year anniversary.
Sounds good to me.
The
Well,
50-year anniversary of King Kong Lives. We'll be talking about the 8K Blu-ray edition.
well, until then, I will say thank you for joining me on this one. Can't wait to get to the next one. So as always, I appreciate you joining me.
Always a pleasure.
And as always, we thank anyone who's out there listening or interacting with us on our Facebook page or anything like that. We appreciate you. So
spread the word, spread the word.
Absolutely. Keep her coming. We got an episode every week. We are not stopping. So we have all the way through to 2026 planned. So we're just going to keep on marching. So Chris, as always, again, thanks for joining me. Thanks to anyone who's out there listening. Peter Jackson's 2005 King Kong next week. But until next time.
Not even your Kong can survive that.